Alright, so in this video, I'm going to cover a particular type of butternut squash variety. It's an Italian variety called, I'm sure I'm going to mess this name up, Rogosa Violina Gioia, which, right here we go. Rogosa Violina Gioia. I believe it translates to like rugged violin joy, because of its wrinkled shape. So before I waste your time, I live in central North Carolina, Piedmont region, and would I recommend growing this variety, right? If that's what you're interested in. So the first answer to that is no, I would not recommend growing this variety. I just don't think it's suited well for our climate, and I would not grow it again. But with that said, let's cover that and why. So first, let's talk about how big the plant gets. And we're going to talk about how size does not translate into productivity. So this plant is here. It goes all the way out here. It's also over there. And it also trails all the way behind those sweet potatoes, going all the way around. That's one plant. And to give you an idea of a size difference between the very different type of variety, that there, directly in the center, just this outline right there, in that little spot, that is a butterbush butternut squash. There's two little butternuts on it right now. Of course, it's meant to be a compact plant, but this plant is massive. And I'm going to show you two different squash. I believe that's all I'm going to get. So we got a small one, and I'm going to show you the bigger one that's still on the plant, which we're going to leave. So this is the small one that it delivered. And, it's good color, super hard rind, no issues with it. But, it's pretty small. And if you say, well, I got like 10 of those, that'd be great. But I'm really only going to get about 2 squash, it looks like. And there's multiple reasons why. Well, you'll see that the maturity date on it is kind of long. And maturity dates don't really translate to reality. Those are under ideal conditions that the plant's involved in. And things like heat, temperature, moisture, sun exposure, all these things come into those days in either direction. So this thing definitely sped up faster than it said. So the problem with this type of plant is that it wants to be very vigorous. It wants to grow a lot of vines out. And then it wants to set its flowers. The problem is that it's setting its flowers in peak heat. Northern Italy, where this is from, is very different than central North Carolina. And on top of it, we are having truly a record heat summer. We've broke multiple records this year. We've had many consecutive 90-degree days. We've actually had a few 100-degree days. That's the air temperature, not the heat index. Heat index has been 105 plus many days in a row. And then there's a much bigger problem, actually. Nighttime temperatures staying above 70 degrees. It puts the plant under a constant stress. It never gets to cool down. It wants to drop down to the 60s at night. So what happens is you don't get a lot of male flowers. You get a lot of male flowers, not many female flowers. And then those female flowers struggle for multiple reasons, which are there. One, the pollen viability can really drop down at those high temperatures, i.e. it just, frankly, is not very effective pollen. It's not pollinating. The humidity that we have here can make the pollen sticky, and it does not transmit well from the bees to getting the pollen off the male flowers and then into the female flower. On top of it, when the plant is stressed, the plant can abort those female flowers as well as just reject some of the pollinated female fruits and just say, nope, I'm too stressed out. I'm just going to try to survive here. I'm going to push growth, but you don't get any fruit that way. So let's see the other one. Obviously, I'm not going to pick this yet because I do want it. So this is a much bigger one. And you can see some variety right there. So what would I recommend growing instead? So if you're stuck on heirlooms exclusively, for example, let's cover that first. I have grown for many years the Sucrine Dewberry butternut squash. That is a French butternut squash, and it does much better. And the answers are the plant is very different. So one, it's not nearly as vigorous as this. It's a smaller plant, still a decent sized plant, but nothing like this thing, not even remotely close. On top of it, it tends to put its fruits closer to the base of the plant, it sets flowers earlier, it sets production earlier. So it has a lot of its, frankly, butternut squash already set before you hit that peak heat. And they're kind of maturing through that summer, but you're not necessarily pollinating, trying to pollinate flowers during that worst part of summer. If you are open to different types, an old school variety I don't think performs that well, but is the Waltman butternut squash. We also have the honey nut squash, which is, I'll show you because I grow it every year. It's this plant here, kind of in the center. Not that, that's a type of honeydew, but this center plant here, it goes out and it has a ton of butternuts on it. It actually has one interesting thing that can happen when two things grow next together. You actually have two butternuts right here that have became one, two that turned into one. That happens. And I mean, there's just a whole bunch of butternut squash in here throughout, right? And she's still going, by the way. See one right there, and that honey nut. So that's a great, very small one. Storage life isn't great because the skin's so thin. It's actually very edible, and because they can dry out pretty fast. And then a variety I haven't grown, I'm going to grow next year, is called the South Anna. So the South Anna is a butternut squash. It is actually somewhat open pollinated. It's not locked in, so you could potentially save the seeds. It may vary a little different. It's a cross between the Seminole pumpkin, which is a tropical pumpkin, Florida. Can't really get more tropical than that in America than Florida. So the Seminole pumpkin, and it's crossed with the Waltman butternut squash. Now they're both part of the same family. And so the reason why they were trying to cross these varieties or come up with something, there's a farm that's up in Virginia where they're trying to do trials and create a butternut squash that can be reliably grown in the southeast. And the biggest issue that southern gardeners have with the butternut squash is actually powdery mildew disease, especially grown in mass fields for actual production value, whether that's a farmer's market or grocery stores, etc. So I'm going to try that variety next year and see how it does. But long story short, would I grow this northern Italian violin butternut squash again? And the answer is no. It's too vigorous for what it does. If it put out 10 butternut squash, I'd be like, absolutely, because you can cut something else out to compensate for its size that it's taking. But for the size that this plant takes, and let's just do a walk around. So it's all the way over here, all the way over here, all the way over here. We're walking all the way across. That's a zucchini. It's a Mexicana zucchini. It's the best zucchini you could ever grow. I actually got a video on that. Production value on that thing is absolutely mind-numbing, insane. I think one could honestly produce more zucchini than a family of 4 could eat. And this plant comes all the way out here. Now, this growth looks good on it, but I highly doubt it's going to do anything at this point. So you see how big it is, and all that's there. There's 4 different varieties of sweet potatoes mixed all in there. So as you see, huge plant. You see some flowers there. Bees are working their magic. And we got some cucumbers. We got a little golden Jenny cantaloupe over there. So anyway, guys, would I grow this variety again? No. And I hope this gives you some information on why. Until next time, I hope y'all have a good day. See y'all later.